In this vid, I'm going to be reviewing a deck by pgmcsskater. He's running a variation of Donphan Yanmega Zoroark, one of my favorite decks in the current format. And I'll be honest, at first when he asked me for deck advice, I thought his account had been hacked. Perry has won cities, states, and regionals, as well as some battle roads, while I have just won a few battle roads. He is one of the best players that I know, and this deck he's been working on with Curran Hill, who is another excellent Pokemon player, probably the best Pokemon player that I can say that I personally know, and I just couldn't figure out why he was asking me, of all people, for advice. I'm just not that good. But he insists that his account wasn't hacked, that he wanted my advice, so while I may not be as good a player, I think maybe I do a better job of just reviewing decks. Go figure, but I'm decent anyways, and let's go ahead and take a look at the deck because he's got some really interesting things going on in it. Some are really predictable, but one completely threw me off, so some really interesting deck lists that I think it'd just be fun to share. I think that this deck is already pretty close to perfect, but I do see a few things that if I were running this deck would make me feel a little more comfortable. You run the perfect starting line of one Manaphy and one Tyrogue, one to get the donk, and another to help you get set up. Your main attacker is a 4-3 line of Yanmega. Yanmega is great because it can linear attack any babies on the bench, or Sonic Boom for a complete 70 without being affected by weakness or resistance, and doesn't need any energy to do so as long as your hand size is the same as your opponent. I'm a little confused though why you run a 4-3 line, but you don't run any rescue energies to immediately be able to evolve to another Yanmega on the bench. Your other strong attacker is a 2-2 line of Donphan. With 6 fighting energy in the deck, you should be able, if you have the time, to attach enough energy to Heavy Impact for a strong 90, or Earthquake for a very quick 60. Donphan is really an amazing Pokemon to have in because there's so many cards right now that are weak to fighting. Zoroark, Chinchino, Magnezone, Zekrom, and those are just a few. The downside of Donphan, though, is that it's weak to water, and there's several strong water cards in the current format, the biggest one probably being Kingdra. Kingdra, with 1 plus power, can easily knock out a Donphan in one hit, so to counter that, you include a Reshiram in your deck. As long as Reshiram is in play because it's a fire type, Dragon Steam is reduced from 60 damage to 20 damage. With Donphan's Pokebody, that means Kingdra's only hitting for 20, and essentially is no threat to Donphan. The last Pokemon in this deck is a 3-3 line of Zoroark. The line I think is perfect. I love Foul Play to be able to choose any of the defending Pokemon's attacks and use it as its own. This can get you out of so many predicaments. Your energy line is perfect. 4 DCE to be able to utilize on that Zoroark, 6 fighting energy for the Donphan, and hopefully you'll be able to copy your opponent's hand enough that you won't need any energy with Yanmega. The only suggestion I have is maybe to find some room for a rescue or two. Just since you run the additional Yanma, you can have one sitting on the bench waiting to evolve at any time. I believe this is going to be one of the biggest decks at Worlds, and therefore anyone that's playing it is going to have to deal with a lot of mirror matches. So what it comes down to is your trainer and supporter line faster than anyone else's? You run 4 Collector, and then 4 Communication in case you need to throw those basic Pokemon back in to search out for Stage 1s. I think both of these can be safely reduced down to 3 each because you run 4 Junk Arms that you can use to reutilize those communication. You also run plenty of hand refreshers to be able to draw into more Pokemon, so I don't really think a 4 line of Collector is necessary. You run 3 Pokemon Reversal, which I think is a great number. Being that it's a flippy card, I like to have more of them in a deck just in case it continuously fails. You run 2 Switch, but I might consider just dropping that down to 1. If Donphan gets dragged up, you can still use 1 Switch to get him out of the active position, and since you're only running 1 baby Pokemon that could potentially be asleep, you wouldn't need as many Switch as you would if you ran more Cleffa. I would throw in 1 Flower Shop, because with the 2-2 line of Donphan, there's a really good chance that part of that line is going to be prized. So if you lose 1 Donphan, and whatever part left is possibly your last prize card, you might need to use that Flower Shop to dig out the Donphan again. While I typically recommend 1 Twins in every deck, I think this deck is going to be the exception. With a strong Yanmega line, you should be taking the first prize, and even in a mirror match, if they happen to take one, the chance of the Twins being in your hand before you can return the KO is pretty slim. You run 3 plus power, and I found that my deck ran pretty well with just 2. However, I was running a few different attackers in it, so that may be the reason why I did alright without it. If you change things up though and find that you really need to drop something, 2 plus power is probably pretty safe. Your last trainer really took me by surprise. A single potion. I would expect to see this maybe in a Steelix type deck or something else that really requires a lot of healing, but I definitely didn't expect it in this deck. But at the same time, I can see where it would help in the mirror match. Forcing your opponent to do 30 more could really make the game. Since you run Junk Arm, being able to also reuse Potion can be huge. So while I initially thought that this card could easily be dropped, now I'm not so sure. My suggestions up until now have just been a few options to run in case you're finding that it's not running the way that you like, but my next suggestions I think are a little better. You only run 3 Judge and 2 Copycat, but with Yanmega being your essentially primary attacker, I'm surprised that you don't run higher lines. I would expect a combination of 7 Judge and Copycat. My personal preference is 4 Copycat and 3 Judge, but a lot of people are happier with the 4 Judge to disrupt their opponent and the 3 Copycat. You also run 2 Juniper, which I personally feel better just running 1. I find that when I run 2, I'm typically throwing away something extremely important, but with a little extra luck, 2 might just work out perfect for you. Your last supporter is a line of 2 Professor Oak's New Theory. I think if you increase your Copycat and Judge, you can easily just drop this. The chances of you copycatting your opponent are especially early game, which is when I would be using the Professor Oak's New Theory anyways, are pretty high. So I really don't think that Oak is a necessary card. So that's pretty much all I have. This is already an extremely well-built deck, and at this point I'm just trying to think of some different ways to change it up, as I figure you must be having some sort of problems if you're coming to me for advice. So if anyone else would like their deck reviewed, just PM me the list, and whether you would like immediate feedback via a blog review, which can take 2 or 3 days, or if you'd like to be considered for a video review. Video reviews can take up to 3 weeks, possibly more depending on how many I can get done a day, and if you're not chosen for a video review, you'll automatically get a blog review anyways. Thank you for watching!